Everyone's talking about DriveClub again, and if you've been anywhere near X lately, you've probably seen exactly why. Out of nowhere, timelines have been flooded with clips of DriveClub in motion, cars slicing through rainstorms, headlights bouncing off wet pavement, water droplets reacting dynamically across the windshield, and the reaction had been almost universal. How does a game from 2014 still look this good? The viral post that reignited the conversation said it best. Still can't believe this is a 12-year-old game. And honestly, that's not just nostalgia talking. That's a genuine reassessment of something that may have been overlooked in its own time. What's fascinating about this resurgence is that it's not happening because of a remake, a sequel, or even a re-release. There's no marketing push, no anniversary edition, no corporate strategy behind it. This is entirely organic. People rediscovered a clip, shared it, and suddenly thousands of players, some who played it at launch, others who never touched it, all asking the same question. Did we underrate DriveClub? And the answer is a lot more complicated than a simple yes or no. To understand why DriveClub is getting the second wave of attention, you have to go back to how it started. Developed by Evolution Studios, the game was originally meant to be a major showcase title for the PlayStation 4. It was supposed to launch alongside the console, acting as a visual and social centerpiece for Sony's next generation. But then came the delay, over a year. And in the gaming industry, timing is everything. By the time DriveClub finally released, expectations had shifted, the hype had cooled, and the market it entered was very different from the one it was originally designed for. At launch, the reception was mixed, and that's putting it kindly. The server struggled almost immediately, which was a huge problem for a game that heavily emphasized social features and online connectivity. The content felt limited compared to what players were expecting, and perhaps most importantly, the design philosophy felt out of step with the trends of the time. Racing games were going open world. Players wanted freedom, exploration, and massive maps. DriveClub, on the other hand, was unapologetically track-based, structured, focused. It didn't try to compete with the scale of something like Forza Horizon. Instead, it doubled down on curated racing experiences. And at the time, that decision hurt it. But here's where things get really interesting, because that same design choice might be exactly why people are appreciating it now. In today's gaming landscape, where open worlds can sometimes feel bloated and unfocused, there's something incredibly appealing about a game that knows exactly what it wants to be. DriveClub doesn't waste your time. You pick a race, you hit the track, and for those few minutes, everything else disappears. It's pure racing distilled down to its essentials. And then there are the visuals. Even now, over a decade later, DriveClub holds up in a way that very few games do. The lighting system, the car models, the environmental detail, all of it is impressive. But the real star of the show is the weather system. The rain effects in particular are what sparked this entire conversation again. The way droplets form, merge, and react to movement isn't just visually striking. It's dynamic, it's believable, and it enhances the immersion in a way that goes beyond simple graphics. And here's the key detail. Those effects weren't even in the game at launch. They were added later as part of ongoing updates. Because that's the part of the DriveClub story that often gets overlooked. It's evolution. After a rocky release, Evolution Studios didn't abandon the project. They kept working on it. They added new cars, expanded the track list, refined the gameplay, and introduced features that elevated the entire experience. Over time, DriveClub transformed from a disappointing launch title into something genuinely special. Not perfect, but undeniably compelling. The kind of game that rewards patience and in doing so quietly builds a loyal fanbase. It even expanded into virtual reality with a version for PlayStation VR. While it couldn't match the visual fidelity of the main game due to hardware limitations, it offered something else entirely, a sense of presence. The feeling of being inside the car, of experiencing speed and motion from a first-person perspective, added a new layer to what DriveClub could be. It wasn't just a racing game anymore, it was an experience. And yet, despite all of this, DriveClub never reached a level of success that its quality might suggest it deserved. Part of that comes down to the competitive landscape. Racing games are dominated by a few major players, and breaking into that space is incredibly difficult. You've got Gran Turismo representing the pinnacle of simulation racing, a franchise with decades of history and a dedicated fan base. You've got Forza Horizon redefining what arcade-style racing can be with massive worlds and constant content updates. And then there's Mario Kart, which continues to dominate the more casual, party-focused side of the genre. That doesn't leave much room for something like DriveClub, a game that sits somewhere in between. Not fully simulation, not fully arcade, not open world, not entirely traditional. It carved out its own identity, but in doing so, it also made it harder to categorize, harder to market, and ultimately harder to sell. And we're still seeing that struggle today. New racing games continue to face an uphill battle. Titles like Screamer experiment with style and presentation, but struggle to find a large audience. Even established brands can falter, with games like Sonic Racing Crossroads receiving positive feedback but underperforming commercially. The genre is thriving at the top, but it's incredibly difficult to break into that top tier. Which brings us back to DriveClub, because when you look at everything, the rough launch, the long-term improvements, the visual achievements, the shifting trends, it starts to feel less like a failure and more like a missed opportunity. A game that didn't fail because it was bad, but because the circumstances around it weren't in its favor. And that's why this current resurgence matters. Because for the first time in years, people are looking at DriveClub without the baggage of its launch. They're not thinking about server issues or missing features. They're seeing it for what it became, not what it was on day one. And what it became was a polished, visually stunning, deeply immersive racing experience that stood out in ways we might not have fully appreciated at the time. It also raises an interesting question about the future. In an era where remasters, remakes, and revivals are more common than ever, could DriveClub make a comeback? Would a modern version, with today's hardware, stable infrastructure, and a fresh audience, finally get the recognition it deserves? Or is it destined to remain a cult classic, remembered fondly by those who experienced it at its best? Either way, one thing is clear. DriveClub is being talked about again, and this time, the conversation feels different. It's not about what went wrong, it's about what went right. And maybe that's the best outcome it could have hoped for. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more deep dives like this, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And if you want to support the channel even further, check out my Patreon, link in the description, where my latest exclusive is a deep dive into whether or not Xbox exclusives are dead. Thanks for watching, and as always, game on.